Well, thanks for getting us rolling. And just as we're getting started here again, a friendly reminder to just keep your video on and your microphone off. I think as we hear folks pop in and share examples and stories from their districts, it's always nice to be able to connect what you're saying with you as a person. So I really appreciate you all doing that. If we could advance to the next slide. Just some introductions before we get rolling. My name is Megha Kansra. I'm the Director of Resilient Schools Strategy at the TEA. And that is essentially the umbrella within which the Resilient Schools Support Program lives, which you are all a part of. And I think I've met most of you at this point, but there might be a few who I haven't met. So I am joined here today by a few members of my RSSP core team, Teresa Spiewak, Mavis Snelson, and Mercedes Aquilini. I'm also joined, excitingly, by several members of our TEA Special Populations team, Jacob Klett and Julie Lara Martinez, who will be leading today with sharing content, ideas, and good food for thought as you all think about some next steps to engage families with a diverse learner's lens. And we're also joined by three other members of Julie and Jacob's team, who I'll actually let Julie and Jacob introduce in a moment. Before we get rolling, just overall our agenda today, I'll provide just a bit of framing up front, since you all are part of RSSP, providing a little bit of connection between the program and what we're here today to talk about. Then we'll go through session objectives, some norms and expectations. We'll talk about challenges during virtual and hybrid learning. And then we'll spend some time talking about how to engage families of diverse learners, and specifically really thinking about some examples that we've seen in the space, but also hearing examples from each other. And then we'll do some action planning and wrap up. If we could move to the next slide. So why are we doing a session on diverse learners? The first reason is really that we have heard the need loud and clear from all of you. So when we surveyed your teams about topics of interest, about 86% of you said you were interested in better supporting students with disabilities, and about 70% of you said you were interested in better supporting English learners. At the same time, we also strongly believe that at this moment in time with remote learning, there's certainly a risk that inequity will be exacerbated for some of our students who need the most support. For us to really take an equity lens first and foremost, we really want to make sure we are focusing on students with disabilities and English learners in every single action and move we make. We could move to the next slide. And how does all of this tie to the work that you all are doing as part of the RSSP? So I think as many of you all know, as part of the RSSP, we are all collectively moving forward what we call remote learning power moves that sit under one of these kind of 5 big levers. And you can see under these 5 big levers, multiple different yellow and orange tiles that depict these power moves. And each of you has gone through this process with your teams of prioritizing which big moves, maybe about 1 to 3 moves, are you going to focus on as a district to really turn up the dial on remote learning quality at your schools. We strongly believe that to nail it on any of these power moves, it's important to prioritize diverse learners and to really shape your approach to any of these moves, whether it's ongoing PD, whether it is student and family communication, whether it's data-driven instruction, to really prioritize how English learners and students with disabilities are being supported through these moves. Only then do we believe you'll actually be able to, nail it on any of these moves. With that, I am going to pass it over to my colleague, Julie, who's going to get us started with session objectives.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this eve of Halloween. Our session objectives this morning will be one, as Megan mentioned earlier, we'll ask you to identify some challenges and challenges that students and families might be facing during this hybrid and virtual learning. We're also going to ask you to begin thinking about a strong vision of family engagement in the context of your LEA. And then finally, we're going to ask you to prioritize some steps that you can take that would be supportive to sustaining effective family engagement.
Great, and thanks, Julie. Before we jump into the content for today, just wanted to share some session norms to ground our time together. We recognize we only have a short amount of time together, and we want to make it as purposeful and as possible for everyone on today's call. So as you're engaging in a variety of different learning activities today, we'll be doing some whole group activities, some small group activities, and also you'll have some independent reflection time. Regardless, we invite you to please keep your mind open to any new ideas, new perspectives, new approaches that you might be hearing about today, whether that's something in today's presentation material or perhaps something that is shared by a colleague on today's session. Please reserve your judgment, respect that folks are coming into this work with different feelings, different opinions, and different experiences and situations. But do actively listen to each other and ask questions to ensure your understanding. Regarding the just remote engagement piece, as Mega had mentioned, as we started today, we ask that to the extent possible, please keep your camera on to support active engagement. Mute your mic when you're not speaking, and use chat throughout the session today with questions, with additional examples, with your reactions to any of the content today. And of course, if you are experiencing any technical difficulties, you're welcome to also use the chat to let us know, and hopefully we can help to troubleshoot any of those issues for you as well.
Okay, challenges during virtual learning. Before we jump into that breakout session, I would like for us to remember that for decades, research has shown that authentic family and community engagement really does have positive impact on student educational outcomes and student achievement. An article that's linked there is a recent, 2017 publication from, it's a collaboration between AIR and the Nellie Mae Foundation. And they canvassed, hundreds of articles, but landed on 35 that really spoke about exciting opportunities exciting activities that various LEAs around the country were doing and how it really did impact student achievement and positive student outcomes. Another, something else I'd like to draw your attention to is the idea that we've evolved from the terms parent involvement to family engagement. Family engagement is much more inclusive. Obviously, families are generally the support systems of students, not just the single parent or mother or father. But also the word engagement really pushes us to think about families being a partner in a two-way activity of engaging with, or of communicating with schools, rather than families being passive sort of consumers of information. We really want to encourage and start practices that really authentically engage families, that allow them to have an open line of communication with the LEA, with the district level and the campus level, and obviously the classroom level, so that they are so that they can influence not only instructional programming, but also just the culture of the school and the district at whole. So I just kind of wanted to make that point, that how critical family engagement really is. Before we move in though to our next slide, which is going to ask you guys to go into some breakout rooms, I did want to take a minute to introduce some members of my team. Ricky Santillana is here. He'll serve as one of the facilitators. Xochitl Anabarrocha is also here, and Amy Johnson. The three of them will be serving as breakout facilitators as we move into the next sessions where we go into small group. There's obviously other TA partners that will be serving as breakout session guides. Are we ready to go? Okay. So when we're in our breakout sessions with your various facilitators, please take the time to introduce yourself again, sort of build community with one another. And we really do want you to share some challenges that you might be experiencing or that you know about in your LEA that are related to family engagement in the hybrid setting. And so that really will kind of hopefully spark some conversation and idea generation around that. We have 10 minutes, guys, for this. Mega, 10 minutes for this?
Yes, 10 minutes.
So we'll be going to breakout rooms here shortly, and you have 10 minutes to begin building some relationships. See you soon.
Hey there, Heather. We just dropped into breakout rooms, so we might sort you real quick.
All right.
1 second. Group.
And while you're there, I just have to say again, I love the whiteboard around you. Just
Oh.
always fun to spot. I'm like,
Thank
it's a
you.
view into Heather's brain is like that always busy whiteboard.
It might be a scary place to be, but anyway, thank you.
Funny, I have those big chart papers all around my space here.
Yeah.
I'll add people to the from the waiting room if you want me to, Teresa.
That would be great. We've had quite a few joins, so I'm just sorting people in now.
Okay. And then it looks like, okay. Jacob, do you have the function at the bottom for breakout rooms?
I'm looking right now and I still don't see it.
I'm sorry, Heather. It keeps coming up with error, so I'm going to try one more time and like a different group to get you into it.
No worries.
No, Julie, I still don't have it.
Are you able to admit folks when they're in the waiting room?
I can do that, but I don't see the breakout option.
Oh yeah, now I'm showing that Heather has an invite to room 3. Oh, okay.
And Jesus?
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can go pop in.
Jesus, would you be able to remind us which LEA you're with? Oh, never
It's
mind.
done.
It sent him to group 3.
It is
Okay.
going to group 3.
Yeah, so I think whatever happened with Mavis yesterday, when people joined, with a couple people, it kind of sent them just, I don't know. They're at least with people, like there's no just like 1 or 2 people, but some of
Cool.
them might be a little funny than what we originally planned.
I'm gonna maybe join a group that Amy, Xochitl, and Ricky are not in, just to, because I feel like later they could join us for the debrief and tell us what's up. So I'll join.
I can have, Julie joined with Adam, and then do you want to join
I'll join
with
room
Jared
5.
and Nicole? Yep.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
And I'm happy to join breakouts if we feel like there's a need. I do have like my screens set up for share, so it is nice to stay if possible. But
No, you're
yeah,
good.
like there is a group or something, I definitely can.
You have eyes on everybody.
Teresa, do you think we're covered with the breakouts? I don't know why I don't have the icon to join. I have all the other host functions showing up.
Lee's in 1. Sochi's in 2. Ricky's in 3. We have a TA partner who's like set up for 4. And then we had TA partner set up for 5. And then I had a room 6, but just with people who didn't show. It's empty for right now.
Okay.
It was right when I hit assign, like 4 people popped in the waiting room. I was like, no. Well, like what 60 more?
I feel like
seconds.
that's, that's just the morning session thing,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Still freaking out about looking at my face backwards. That's really my main. I'm gonna miss the debrief, but just know that that's my main takeaway from this session.
Appreciate that, Mavis.
Oh gosh, I wasn't tracking time. When did we send them off for the 10 minutes?
Great question. I
have it slated to come back at 8:55, so I feel like that's plenty of time.
I was gonna say, if nobody has a better guess, I would say it's been about 5 minutes, like probably about half.
Oh, there's a phone number in the waiting room. I'm gonna admit them and see who. Good morning. I see a phone number. I just want to make sure we can get you in a breakout group with whatever organization you're from.
Maybe their connection isn't coming through.
Oh, I can't send a chat. Okay. No worries.
I think we have most folks back, looks like, right?
I think so.
All right, great. Well, sounds like there were some great conversations happening in the breakouts. As we kind of think about our next steps, we've had an opportunity to share some of the challenges that we're facing in our LEAs regarding virtual learning. In the next section of our time together, we'd like to share just some thoughts on strategies and approaches that LEAs are using to support students during virtual learning. And you'll see some strategies that reflect some practices that started pre-COVID, but that are also continuing now that we're in a landscape where virtual learning is becoming the new norm. Before we dive into that, we'll take a look at some just some guiding thoughts as far as how we can engage in culturally responsive family engagement practices. So thinking about how we engage with families, as Julie mentioned, it really goes beyond just providing information to families and asking them to be passive consumers, but we really go beyond that to effectively engage them and ensure that our families, our parents, and our caregivers of our students are engaged as partners in their child's education. So just like each of you on today's session have different preferences around communication and the way that you engage with others, the families of our diverse learners also have these preferences. So as we're thinking about that, if we're initially developing or perhaps revising an existing plan for family engagement, it's important for us to recognize that there may be differences in expectations, differences in understandings or preferences between school staff and the family members that we're engaging. It's important for school staff not just to understand this or to understand the primary language or means of communication used by the family, but also to recognize that oftentimes language and cultural identity can be very closely connected for families. When we're thinking about how we work with the families of students with disabilities, we want to be mindful of families' beliefs and understandings about disability, and recognize that sometimes our families might have different perspectives about disability than those that are held by the school staff. It's very important for us to identify the means by which our families prefer to engage with school staff, whether that's in person and writing, through phone messages, through text messages, or through other means. We need to identify those means that are really preferential and meaningful for our families, and implement engagement systems that honor those preferences and that are also responsive to the language and culture of the families that we are serving. So as we think about the practices in the next couple of slides, just keep these principles in mind.
We'll go through some exemplars from a variety of districts around the state. Next, if you'll go ahead and move to the next slide. Edgewood ISD, for some of you who don't know, is a school district within San Antonio, the city limits of San Antonio. And the superintendent, Dr. Hinojosa, I think his tenure started, well, it did start well before COVID. And so in 2019, he and his leadership team decided to implement what's called pláticas, and pláticas in translation is talks. And so what he did was he went into the community and he asked families to host gatherings in their backyard. As you can see in the pictures there, some light refreshments were provided. There's, you know, the leaders came and he's there. You can see in the bottom picture, he's there kind of presenting information, again, pre-COVID, pre-crisis. So he's sort of sharing updates and information about what's happening in the community, in the school district. The first two links there are news articles in the 2019 year, and where San Antonio is sort of promoting the idea that there are these cultural, that there are these pláticas that this superintendent is doing. And one of the most powerful quotes I found in one of the articles is someone says, there's a lot of reasons why families may not visit the campus. It could be a cultural barrier, a language barrier, a job barrier, and that some families might have multiple jobs. But when you break bread with families in the setting of their home, there really is some power in that. And so we'll watch the video in a minute, and it starts at 2:38. I'll intro that video in a second. But to go back to what Jacob had mentioned earlier with culturally responsive principles in mind, Dr. Hinojosa and his team, I am sure, did a lot of thoughtful planning, a lot of information gathering, a lot of pulse checking within the community, and this primarily large Latino community, collectivist and sort of breaking bread, as the quote mentions, is it's a very clear and strong general characteristic of Latino families. And so it works really well in this community. It is very important as you think through, and we watch the video and we think about the idea of going into families' backyards and asking them to come together in this way, to think really mindfully about what that looks like in your community and the cultural values and norms of the families that you serve. So we'll go ahead and start the video, the last link, Community Pláticas. We'll start it at minute 2:38 and go to about 4:40. Before we start it, this is Dr. Garza from Palo Alto College. He's actually interviewing Dr. Hinojosa in June of this year during the pandemic. And Palo Alto College and Edgewood have a partnership where they support students getting their associate's degree from Edgewood. But it's just a reminder and a way to do pláticas virtually. So we'll go ahead and start, sorry, at 2:40.
For those of us who are leaders, we have to reimagine how we lead, because we are losing a certain level of connectivity just in the emotional sense, and that changes how we educate. Education, such a big part of education is relationship building and really engaging the learner as a person before we educate them. And that's extremely important, as well as the community that surrounds that educational institution. I enjoy very much doing pláticas in my neighborhood, and I feel like a caged lion now because I can't get out anymore. And so for those of you who know me, I love being out in the streets. I love talking to folks. Can't do that right now. So part of reimagining the future is not just for students, but it is also for the adults, because obviously it's the adults who deliver the instruction to students. So it's really reimagining how do we provide equal amounts of support in terms of professional development for teachers, as well as for students when they return. The third item that we are also facing is the social emotional trauma that most of our students are probably going through right now. A lot of times schools, whether we are in the pre-K-12 or the K-16 system, students come to us with emotional challenges. And so I, as a superintendent, as a parent, as just a human being, I worry about students who are at home and do not come to school. And so those are factors that we're also taking into consideration as we bring students back in, that we address those emotional needs, because our students will not be able to receive instruction until we address those needs. So those are the three things that I think are challenges right now.
It's interesting, and you're exactly right. Anybody who knows Dr. Hernandez, he is a leader with the heart of San Antonio. So Dr. Hernandez does amazing things without in the community, and he's always out there. So if he's not providing turkeys out in the street, he's out at the community's home, having these pláticas, these community pláticas, talking about all the amazing things that are going on in Edgewood ISD.
Feel free, the link is in the PowerPoint, embedded in the PowerPoint if you want to see the rest of that. This, again, as I mentioned earlier, was filmed in June. He has since had pláticas virtually and others, I think, with socially distanced parameters. Again, what I think is really important about this specific example is that it really shows like the most intense way to come into to build community with the families that you serve, and that one of the families hosts something in their backyard and brings you in. Think about the power that a family member might feel and the comfort level of sharing their authentic thoughts and feelings about whatever's happening, whether it's hybrid, whether it's why we do or don't like technology or do or don't have access to technology, and a variety of things, but in their own backyard. I think the sort of filter might be lowered, or the wall might be lowered in their neighbor's backyard to share this information rather than in a school building or via some survey. So anyway, that's just sort of my last bit on the Edgewood example. Thank you.
Okay, in our next example, we're going to take a look at a family engagement practice implemented by Robstown ISD. And in this example, you'll see an illustration of how the district used funds they obtained through a grant to focus on how they engage with the families of children in their district who had autism. So in this case, the district obtained a grant and used the funds to purchase clear backpacks for students with autism, and filled those backpacks with materials and communication supports that could be used at home to support those students. This is actually a practice that Robstown ISD started prior to COVID-19 and the closures related to the pandemic last spring, but it's also something they're continuing during the current 2020-2021 school year. So in addition to developing the backpack kits that you'll see in a minute, in the video clip we'll show, the district also created this video tutorial that helps walk families through the materials in the backpack. They developed a color coding system to help understand how the items paired together and how to use them, and also included directions on how the families could use the materials with students. The full video is actually about 10 minutes long, so due to time constraints today, we won't have the opportunity to take a look at the whole video. But we will take a look at the first 2 minutes or so, just so that folks on today's call can get a sense of what Robstown ISD did with this initiative.
All right. Hi, I'm Laura Zimmerman, and this is Mariana De La Rosa.
Hello.
And this is a tutorial on just a few ideas of how to use the materials that are included in your backpack. Whoops, in your backpack. All the materials in your backpack are sensory activities that will help your child be able to work on their speech, their fine motor skills, and even their gross motor skills while still having fun. In addition, these activities are even calming for your child too. So it's just going to be a fun way for them to work on a lot of goals all at once.
So we're going to look inside and see some of the things that you'll find in your backpack. So in your backpack, there is a ball, and that ball comes with a pink communication board.
Oh, whoops. I'm still on.
We got to find the ball. There's a pink communication board for the ball.
Okay.
You'll find bubbles, and with the bubbles, a blue communication board. you'll find a book that comes with a yellow communication board. There's sidewalk chalk, and that comes with a red communication board. You'll also find Play-Doh, and the Play-Doh comes with an orange communication board. Also, you'll find a whiteboard with picture icons of all the activities, as well as a restroom icon. There is also 2 vocal output devices with picture icons. One of them has bubbles, and the other one is a vocal output device that has a picture of Play-Doh.
So the Robstown ISD, Robstown is in Region 2, right outside of Corpus Christi. Pretty small community. And I had the privilege of being out there and visiting about a year and a half ago when they, just after they had received or were granted the funded for the grant. And it was with them, that Robstown ISD and like 8 other LEAs. And I can't remember if this was actually a requirement of the grant or if this is what they chose to do, but they really wanted to make their family engagement more robust. And so the 4 flyers that are pictures here, they're actually not the flyers linked, are example of events that they did, again, prior to COVID. What I find interesting about this and what I really wanted to bring home, especially because I heard something in one of the breakout rooms, there's parent painting night, music therapy, parent training, bark in the park where you can bring your dogs and your family to the park. And there's only one real training about behavior or challenging behavior. And again, going back to this idea that that families can be more than just consumers of information and training from educators. These activities are just a sample of activities that the district planned, but they're very inclusive of all family members in the home. Because the community is so small, they were able to sort of invite or sort of have open invitation to everyone else, or to the larger community. The bark in the park, I mean, everybody's out there playing with their dogs, and sure, there are some resources and opportunities to engage and talk with families on a sort of more one-on-one basis around a variety of topics related to their child with autism or their child with disabilities. But I just really appreciated that there was almost more just sort of community events and relationship building opportunities than there were, here's how to be a better disciplinarian, or here's how to be a better, again, thinking about what Jacob mentioned earlier, when we talk about culturally responsive beliefs around disability. Not all families believe that their child's disability needs to be corrected in the same way that the school system might think so. And so when we're talking, we have to be really mindful when we're talking and planning about these variety, again, research-based. I get it as an educator, I understand, but we do have to find a fine balance. So that was before, the events were before COVID. And then this video that you see there, you can tell very informal, was provided in English and in Spanish. And that was a way that they were able to repurpose the funds during the COVID time to give to the families this information. It's an on-demand video, again, in English and Spanish, that families can access.
All right. As we're thinking about how we can effectively engage families during times of virtual learning, it's also important to recognize that while students are learning virtually at home, many families are receiving guidance from all over the place, from multiple sources with different recommendations and thoughts on how they can support their children in new and in sometimes ways that look different than how they maybe did prior to virtual learning and the COVID pandemic. So in thinking about this, while we're focusing specifically today on how we can engage families of diverse learners with an emphasis on our English learners and our students with disabilities, family engagement doesn't always have to be specific to language or ability or disability. Many times families of these student groups also need what all of our families need during this challenging time. And we recognize that managing stress and managing anxiety was in the spring and continues to be a challenge that many families are facing. And thinking about that, it's important for us as educators to have clear and open systems of communication with our families. Having these open systems of communication can help reduce those feelings of stress and anxiety. That could also include providing resources, providing supports or strategies that can help parents, families, and caregivers manage their own stress and anxiety during times of at-home learning. Wanted to highlight briefly, and we're not going to show the video, but McAllen ISD actually produced a webinar specifically for parents, families, and caregivers in their district that focused on helping to manage stress and anxiety in the home, and also addressed some of the needs and concerns around scheduling for students during at-home learning, and also provided resources that were geared toward working families. This webinar was recorded and posted to YouTube so that families could have ongoing access to the content. During the live webinar, a link was shared for the participants where they could submit questions. That link was even kept open for a week following the webinar, so that questions could continue to be submitted after the event. And the webinar was available as the recording after the live session was over, so that families who were unable to log in for the live session were still able to access that content and access that live link. And go to the next slide, please. Training sessions around virtual learning designed for parents, families, and caregivers can also offer opportunities for engaging directly with families and supporting partnership during times of at-home learning. Remote opportunities for parent and family support can offer an opportunity for families to connect in and make sure that they are connected in on the efforts of the LEA and have clear understandings of how their students are engaging in learning during the virtual learning at home period. Here, I just wanted to showcase some supports that Sheldon ISD has provided in this area. So this district offers live training sessions that are specifically for families to provide guidance on how families can access remote learning materials, can support students during remote learning sessions. These sessions specifically geared for parents, families, and caregivers are offered on a consistent schedule. They're offered at multiple times. They provide morning sessions and evening sessions, and they also archive them. So they're posted online for those who are not able to attend or wish to go back and revisit a session later on. And also these sessions are offered in multiple languages. They're offered in both English and in Spanish. And here on the screen, you just see a snip from those resources on their website, but you're welcome to use the link embedded here in the slide and check those out more in depth if you're interested. Go to the next slide, please. So here we're going to invite you to rejoin your small group breakout sessions and just pause and reflect on some of what you've seen and heard this morning, and also to begin thinking about your vision for family engagement in your LEAs. As you're engaging in these conversations, some guiding questions are posed here on the slide to help guide your conversations. So be thinking about the ways that families in your LEA are providing input into programs and systems. Also, what methods are currently in use for families to communicate successes or concerns in your LEA? How frequently do staff communicate with families in your LEA? Thinking about your students with disabilities, how are those families involved in the development of their child's IEP, and perhaps in other ways beyond the development of the IEP as well? Also think about what participation and attendance looks like for your family engagement events, and think about what those practices look like currently, and perhaps thinking about some of what you've seen and heard this morning, where you might like to take those practices next. So with that, I think we'll launch you into your breakout sessions. Thanks, Teresa. Good call on that.
No worries. Glad the conversations are robust. Excited.
Yeah, definitely.
I also feel like at this time yesterday, because it was in the afternoon, I felt the need for a break, but I don't really right now.
Yeah, I agree.
We also have a little bit more of like more LEAs versus just like kind of observers in rooms. So I think that's also like really helpful.
That's good. That's probably adding to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we have everybody back on. Looks like, I think 34 is the right number. So welcome back, everyone. Sounds like there were some really great, robust conversations happening in the small groups. I hope that you found this time to be valuable in thinking about the family engagement opportunities that you already have in place in your LEA, and that you've had a chance to start thinking about where you might like to go next. We'll revisit that toward the end of our time together today and give you some time to do some focused action planning and set some goals around family engagement for moving forward as well. Now that we're back from break, wanted to just share a little bit more information for your consideration and planning, specifically thinking about what some actions and planning ideas might look like for supporting family engagement at the campus level. So these are really intended just to be points of consideration that you might consider as you're developing a plan for effective family engagement in your LEA, or revising a current plan for family engagement in your LEA, thinking about virtual learning considerations. Campuses don't necessarily need to implement all of the items that we're going to cover here, but we do hope that you will look at them as suggestions for district level and campus level structures that might be useful in effectively engaging the families in your communities. So from a planning perspective, just some things for consideration might be thinking about how teachers outreach to families. When is that happening right now? Is there consistency to that? And perhaps thinking about providing some dedicated time for teachers or other staff in your LEA or at your campus to directly engage in that outreach to make sure that families are connected in to what's happening at their child's campus, albeit virtually at this point in time. Another practice may be consideration of a phone tree system for reaching families or following up and connecting with families and just checking in with them. Social media can be really powerful. We know that many of our families and our communities are connected through social media, through different groups on social media platforms, neighborhood groups, community groups, those types of platforms. So might consider where families are plugging into social media within your community and thinking about how that fits in to your outreach efforts and engagement efforts. Might also consider, thinking about that stress and anxiety piece that we had touched on earlier in today's session. Many times families might not be sure who to contact at their child's campus if they need information or they have a question or have a concern. So perhaps identifying a common point of contact for families at the campus could be something useful to help streamline those efforts and ensure that families have a dedicated avenue for keeping in touch with what's happening at their child's school. And then also thinking about what are the parameters that are currently in place for supporting and outreaching to families when students are struggling. Is there a consistent parameter around when the campus would reach out to the family if they have concerns or they feel like intervention is needed? And do all the staff on the campus understand those parameters, and have they been able to effectively implement those parameters, or is there support or coaching that's needed in that area? I'll turn it over to Julie to talk a little bit more about some of the actions that campuses might take to engage families.
Thank you, Jacob. Yes, so one of the first actions that some campuses that we've engaged with over the last several months have offered, one specifically, lunch hour chat live with teachers, teachers hosting a lunch hour brown bag for families. Again, we're at work all day. We might think that the best time that families need us is in the afternoons. Well, many families are at home with their children, or someone is at home with the children helping to support them. I have 4 teenagers, and sometimes getting an answer from a teacher as to whether or not that assignment was turned in or not in the middle of the day is probably easier or better for me as a parent than finding out at 9 o'clock at night in an email. So thinking through how to really reach all of the families that somebody mentioned in one of the breakout rooms. This is really about equity for our families. And so, yes, while many families are at home in the evenings and need to engage with teachers, then an opportunity to engage with teachers during the day is helpful as well. And so the way this school district did it is it wasn't during asynchronous time. It was I think it was a team teacher or a grade level lead that held the lunch brown bag like twice a week during the day. And it was not for students. It was certainly aimed for families, sort of a office hours type thing where you could come and go as you needed. And thinking about also, again, the evening time, hosting a Google Hangout night or Google Meets or some sort of social media event, Facebook Live, again, in the evenings. So then you're hitting more people, you're reaching more people if you offer both types of engagement opportunities. We'll talk a little bit later more about leveraging community partners to communicate with families. But right now, again, people are not obviously congregating in the same ways that they used to. And so identifying those immediate community partners that are within the zone of the actual campuses would be something that would probably be very helpful for your campus teams. And as always, it's bulleted last, but it should be always at the front of your mind, providing information in multiple languages. Spanish is very common in Texas, but there are also other languages that our families speak. And so as district leaders, please thinking through how you can exhaust efforts to make sure that you get translations or transadaptions into languages that represent all of the families that you serve. Absolutely, Spanish is easy to access, but again, as I mentioned, there's Vietnamese and Burmese and a variety of other languages that of the families that we serve. So being really mindful of that. Next slide. So as you think about, we asked you earlier to start thinking about a sustainable approach to family engagement, and obviously you're going to need a plan. We're all probably type A personalities for an education, and so there's some sort of plan that needs to and structure that we need. What I've linked here is the Title III Family Engagement Planning Tool as a resource for you all. If you haven't looked at it, please feel free. TXEL.org is our English learner support website for families web portal. Sorry, for all, but there's a family engagement tool there. What I would encourage has guiding questions, sort of breaks down the structure for you. What I would really encourage you all to do is to think about really trying to prioritize contacting those non-contactable students first. When we plan for our most extreme users or our most needy populations, and I mean, I use the term lightly when I say needy, the ones that need it the most, then we likely will be able to reach the larger masses. For example, an elevator is made for people with mobility issues, but everybody uses it. And so if we can think of something that can reach those non-contactable families and students, then likely that method will be able to reach and support all of the families in your district. As Jacob mentioned earlier, with the use of social media, please think through a really sustainable delivery chain. Many families, I am always on Facebook, may not be in Facebook groups, but I'm always on Facebook. And so identify some of those social media outlets. Again, a variety of videos like you saw in some of the district examples this morning. Text or emails. Really, a text message reminder is a lot easier these days for many people than maybe going through an email. I don't know about you guys and how many children you all have, but I have 4 children in school. I get like probably 40 emails a day. And so I don't want to look at my email, but a text message is probably way more for me engaging. So again, doing that background, that legwork of what your community needs and what they would benefit from most. Again, thinking through any events that you can still hold, again, with social distancing and all the health regulations adhered to, but any kind of periodic event that families can count on that will be held is an important way to sustain that family engagement. And obviously newsletters, virtual, sort of digital or hard copies. And enlisting those community partners. Churches, people are still really connected to their religious groups. And so whether they're meeting in an actual building or whether they are meeting virtually, they still do, parish announcements. So reaching out to those offices of those religious communities to provide any kind of information that promotes an event, or that even just says, hey, are you having trouble with school, contact so-and-so at your school district. Libraries that are functioning as well. Many people use those for Wi-Fi spots. So that's a place where people are going even still. Finally, I was speaking with somebody a few weeks ago, and she leverages the major employers in the community. Many of you are in smaller communities where there may be just an airport there, or the state school there, or a factory of some sort. Reaching out to those employers, the HR department of those employers, where that's where their families work. And so that's really a great way to try to communicate and promote information. Again, thinking about that sustainable delivery chain. And then we can move on to the next slide.
All right, so at this point, we'd like for you to take some time to independently do some reflection and consider some actions that could be taken within the next 72 hours. So as you're engaging in this, there is a template in the Google Drive folder that you have access to for today. I believe there's a folder for each LEA that's on today's call. And there will be a shared template. So if there's multiple folks on today's session from the same LEA, you'll have a shared template in thinking about developing some common strategies for your approach to family engagement. And you'll have some time to think through that together in a few minutes as well. But at this point, I'd like to invite you to take about the next 4 minutes or so, just as independent reflection, thinking about the next steps that you discussed in your earlier breakout sessions, anything that you saw in the video examples or heard about today, either through the presentation materials or from your colleagues, and just reflect on that and think about what 1 to 3 practices that you saw or heard about today really resonated with you that you'd really like to implement as part of your LEA's engagement strategy for diverse learners. And thinking about that practice, also consider who could support the implementation of that practice or practices if you're thinking about a couple of things in your LEA. Also, what role do you play in supporting that person that you identified is critical to implementation? What are the systems and structures that need to be in place to ensure that you can implement this practice as part of your engagement strategy? And finally, what goal would you like to set around this? And then what anticipated impact would you like to see as a result?
But first, I'll give you something to think about, sort of an example to think through. Again, as district leaders, and we are thinking about family engagement from the district perspective, but also how can it reach the classroom? So it's got to go to the campus and then to the teachers. So for example, if as district leaders, one of the things you want to implement a system of a point of contact and parameters around outreach for families at the campus level, you would then have to think about how you would support your campus administrator and their admin team to identify, are we going to have a phone tree? Are we going to reach out automatically to the family of a student who has had 3 consecutive absences and or 2 missing FL assignments during virtual learning? Are you going to provide time in the day during the PLCs? So many school districts have flex time or sort of an advisory period, might that teacher then be the caseload or the point of contact for his or her, host of 25 or 30 students? And if the expectation is to reach out to all kids, families, twice a month, well, if you do the math, that's about 2 or 3 attempts to outreach a day for a teacher. So again, throughout the school day, I heard earlier, teachers are struggling with having to find the balance between virtual and in-person instruction. So being very mindful of what the teachers need and how we can support them. But what are those parameters? Again, thinking about those systems and structures, how do you as a district leaders support your campus administrators in coaching and guiding these teachers, their team of teachers to outreach authentically? And again, when we think about the word engagement, are the teachers going to be, again, deliverers of information? Okay, Mikey has, 5 missing assignments in algebra, 3 missing assignments in, biology, or are they going to be, how are things going? Talk to me about your struggle. So what role do you want the teachers to play? I would advocate that they should just be listeners, but again, depends on the goals of your LEA. And so really thinking about how something like that, developing a strategy for outreach and the parameters around that outreach might be a strategy that you use at the district level to implement at the campuses. And so how might you do that? That's just an example.
All right, so at this point, I invite you to take a look at those templates and we'll give you the next 4 minutes just as independent reflection. All right, now that you've had some opportunity to reflect and think about your next steps, and go to the next slide, please. We're going to invite you to once again join your breakout groups and share the strategy or the strategies that you've been reflecting on, that you've identified for implementation. Get some feedback on that, share the anticipated impact for the implementation of that strategy. Also share out around the measures of success. What would you like to see in the short and long term regarding the strategies that you've identified for supporting effective family engagement? And also how this work with family engagement supports your overall goal in your work with the RSSP cohort. So that will launch you back into your breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together just for a few minutes to wrap up at the end and give some folks an opportunity to share out with the whole group. So welcome back, everybody. In the last couple of minutes, we just wanted to open it up. We know that there was some great dialogue, great conversation happening throughout the morning today. We had the opportunity to take a look at some strategies and some ideas in the session materials and hear some ideas from each other. At this point, just kind of want to open it up and see if anybody's willing to jump in and share out anything that resonated with you today, a strategy that you're walking away with that you are really excited to put into place as part of your family engagement plan. Or if you're more comfortable, drop it in chat. That works too.
I'll share it. Carol, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I like for Miss Carol from Spring ISD to share what she just shared in our breakout room about the 2 types of parents and addressing their needs. I think it's really powerful.
Thank you. What I was sharing was we were struggling initially with online because our thought process in the beginning was, let's just take everything we're doing face-to-face and move it virtually. And so all of our parent workshops are going to be virtual. Everything we do, we're just going to do virtual. Well, we went from hundreds of parents to not hundreds of parents. And so in our Family Empowerment Institute, we had that conversation. How do we address the needs? And so we noticed kind of 2 broad types of parents. The one type of parent who they kind of felt like, I'm just trying to survive. I don't want to come to another virtual meeting. I don't want to log on Zoom. I don't want to, I don't have the time. I'm trying to survive. And so for us, it turned into then as a family engagement department, how do we help you survive? And so we took the same groups, support groups that we've always had, like our Ministerial Alliance, our Business Partner Coalition, our District Parent Advisory Council. We leveraged those groups to sort of figure out ways to help those parents who are trying to survive. And so we started hosting with our Northwest Assistance Ministries the food distribution, where they come over to our stadium and they do a food distribution. Anytime there's a church who's hosting a virtual job fair or something like that, we make sure we tap into our parents and provide those opportunities for them, because we notice, again, they need real-time support, either job opportunities or extra food on the table, things like that. Because when they say, I'm not joining another webinar, we have to listen to them. So that was the first type of parents we ran into. The second type was, I'm fine. We're rolling over here, we're rocking and rolling. I still want to be a super active mom, but you all won't let me in the schools. Right now in Harris County, we're still in the red. So we're very, very careful, and we're encouraging virtual volunteer opportunities for our families, because we want, safety is our priority. And so it's just not safe right now to continue to do the traditional volunteerism. And so the parents wanted to kind of mobilize on their own. I want to help. I want to help like I've always done. And so some areas that they identified were simple things like making sure our teachers had enough water. We do encourage our kids to bring 2 bottles of water or bring a thermos where we can replenish their water. But the reality is some kids just forget. And so our parents have mobilized, and now they're dropping off water at the schools. Of course, we're not coming in and putting it in the classrooms. You can drop it off in the front. But this was something that they kind of came up with on their own. They're checking in with their teachers. Are you good on hand sanitizer? I know the district provides it for you, but is there, do you need more? And so for those families who are good and they want to continue to volunteer, we did have to come up with creative virtual ways, and then they mobilize themselves. And so that kind of helped me, because I did spend some time in anxiety at the beginning of this, trying to figure out how do we meet the needs? Because we can say, oh, we're going to do all of this virtually. We're going to host all of these meetings virtually. But if you only have 10 parents or 11 or 12 parents joining in, and you've got 38,000 parents in your district, how effective are you being? And so it was just eye-opening for us in having to truly rethink what we do and how we do it in family engagement. And so far it's helping. And thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you so much for sharing that with the group. We really appreciate it. So we are running up to time here. Do you want to just mention there's a feedback survey in the chat today? Would really welcome any feedback that you'd like to share regarding the content, the experience you had in today's session. So you can grab that out of the chat. And then as far as next steps, supporting students with disabilities and English learners, special populations, as part of your work in the RSSP will continue to be at the forefront. So be watching for more opportunities to come, more information about future learning opportunities and cohort opportunities from the RSSP team in the very near future. So
there's also, really quickly, if you get the PowerPoint, there's also an additional slide with additional resources for you all. I know we just talked a couple of exemplars. We didn't really dig deep into a lot, as much as we could have given the time, but there's some readings and some videos and some activities for your extended professional learning that you can access. It was great talking with you all today.
Meg, is there a way that they can access the PowerPoint if participants don't have it?
Yes, we will definitely be sharing. So no worries, we'll be sharing that as well. And thank you all for joining. Just really appreciated the engagement and energy here today.
Mega, this is Lupita in Spring. I think I saw it in there somewhere. Is there a way that we can also get or share out our email addresses just to exchange ideas? We had the great opportunity to sit in with Grand Prairie and, you know, just the ability to be able to exchange ideas and what's working one part of the state may, you know, help us in the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I might have to just follow up with folks a little bit one-on-one just to make sure everyone's comfortable with us sharing emails. But my sense is that this group would probably appreciate just being able to keep the lines open and being able to be in touch. So in my follow-up, I'll definitely make sure that we're sharing slides. We are also thinking of just pulling together a quick resource with some of the links and ideas that you all as districts shared on different events and things you're already doing. And then we'll also just follow up with email addresses for folks. So you can do a little bit of follow up too.
Just an idea. When we're filling out your feedback on one of the questions is optional, we could put our email address there so that you've already got all of our emails versus reaching out to us individually. Just an idea, because I'm going to put it in my email in the optional. Please describe any input you have around the sessions you're engaging or helpful. I think that way it'll maybe save you some time to create that.
You know, that would be great. I'm pretty sure I have most of your email addresses from you all registering and signing up and attending, but more so just wanted to make sure everyone's good with permission to share email addresses. But yeah, I think Magda agree. Wouldn't hurt to just put it in there so that we have it for sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.